So today we're going to talk about the silence. And you may wonder why people like us need to talk about the silence, since it is such a big part of our lives and part of our worship here. To enter that silence, we're very familiar with it. But when I first started thinking about this idea, it really grabbed me, because for all the years that I have gone in that direction of the silence within, I still don't know that I do it right. I still have problems with it. So do a lot of the people that I know. Our minds are so busy and so active. The world is so noisy. That how do we really get still? How do we really go within? And what am I looking for there? What is it? So why talk about it? I've been asking myself that same question for quite a while. I began to wonder, can such a thing of spirit even be comprehended or explained by the intellect? I'm not sure. I'm still not sure. Can we take an intellectually oriented journey into the realm of spirit? Maybe not. And I could have just really badly failed, and you'll judge that for yourself. But I have some very pretty slides, and maybe you'll be inspired by those. I also, seems like I have a lot of notes, but I want to tell you it's just because I can't see the print, so there's like 10 words on a page. So one of the reasons why we want to look at the silence is because it is vastly important to us. The best definition I could find for it, or description, I don't think there is a definition, but the best description I could find was that it is an inner dimension of mind where we don't just think, read, and talk about God, where we both feel and know God as the truth and the life of our being, and where we know ourselves as one with this power and this presence. Jesus said, "Go to your closet and close the door." And in 15 of his parables, he talked about going to the kingdom, finding the kingdom. How do we get to the kingdom? To Jesus, it was so important that it's like he was saying, if you go nowhere else in your entire life, go here. He didn't tell his disciples to go to Bethlehem or Jerusalem. He told them to go within. And that is the message to us too, to go within. So, here's the thing about the silence. The more we practice the silence, the more readily we will receive inspiration. In this way, we develop a center of peace and stability to which we can return again and again. And that's what we want, is something solid in our lives, something that gives us a place to go when things get tough, so we know what to do and how to approach it. And the beauty is, the more that we practice the silence, the more attuned we become to spirit. As we recognize and seek to understand inspiration that we receive, in other words, the greater our comprehension is of spirit, the greater our understanding will become. And the more spirit will be able to work with us and to inspire us. Jesus said, whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even that he will be taken away from him. And I think that's why we start on a certain level of understanding. We're applying that in our lives right now. And whoever we are, wherever we are, we're applying that level of understanding to our thoughts and to our lives. And so when we turn to God, God takes us from that point. He doesn't expect us to comprehend something way over our heads. He takes us from that point. And when we turn to him, he works with that, gives us more inspiration, more understanding, and we take that into our lives and into our minds, and we work with our thoughts. And in this way, we build our consciousness. And the more we practice the silence, the easier, the more enjoyable, the more fascinating it becomes. I mean, there is a place within us of pure good, of joy and love and peace. What could be more fascinating than that? Who wouldn't want to go there and look around and explore that area? And the more we practice, the more we develop a truth consciousness. That's a consciousness where we're no longer trying to just think loving thoughts, but we're coming from a loving perspective on life, a loving view of life. I see through the eyes of love and compassion and understanding. It's a totally different way of being. Then we're just not thinking good thoughts. Good thoughts are thinking through us. And the more we go, and the more we practice, the more likely we're going to be to seek God first when something happens in our lives, when questions arise. Seek God first. And that's going to save us from a lot of useless and unnecessary suffering. And that sounds good. So what we need to do here is to make this practice part of our lives. And that's the hard part. Make it part of our lives. Make it a priority. Look at your priority list for your day, for your life, what's on your bucket list, and put the silence there. And put it there often. Make a habit out of it. Like anything else in your world is a habit, we make it a habit. So in thinking about this idea, I did a lot of studying, a lot of observation, and I know that when we're looking at something like this, there's the risk of over-intellectualizing this very personal experience. But I have this idea that the more our intellect understands about why we want to feel spiritual things, why we look at spiritual things, spiritual concepts, the more that we understand those on an intellectual basis, the more the intellect can actually help us absorb them and do practices like this. So I was able to kind of, among all of the different possibilities and realms of the silence that are out there, I picked 6 for us to look at today. And these are the aspects, stages, or dimensions of the silence: the urge to turn within, the mental realm, meditation, the silence itself, the inner realm of the kingdom, and after the silence. Those are just names that I came across. So they're not steps. It's not a formula. You might not even be aware that they're going on as you are going into prayer and silence. They could happen on a very subconscious level. And we move back and forth between these aspects of consciousness. They can overlap. And sometimes we even skip them altogether. Eventually they blend into the same thing, our awareness of our oneness with God. So we're going to take these one at a time. And the first thought is this urge to turn within. I found this beautiful quote from Reverend Doug's book, The Complete Soul. Your soul is now and has always been instructing you on how to return to it. The spiritual homesickness you feel is your soul calling you home. You are responding to this call. And I think that this is wonderful because it so beautifully captures the essence of our very real and personal relationship with God, in this that we call our soul. That which is calling us to itself knows us, knows how to reach us and teach us and guide us, loves us enough to bring it to itself. It is us, in the highest and most inner sense. It is also more than us. It is God. So trust the leadings of your soul. The next aspect was the mental realm. And this is where we live most of our time, up in our intellect. So as we turn within, the very first thing that happens is we start getting all of our thoughts. Our intellect is very much engaged, and we have to deal with it. So we might as well make friends with it and put it to work for us. And the first part of that is to choose the direction your attention is going to follow. You have the authority over your mind and your thoughts. And so we choose to go within rather than to just stay out in the material world, in the world of sense. We choose to go within. Isn't that great? We have that ability. And we have many thought people that are going to rebel against this idea. And we continually tell them, this is my choice. I'm going to go within. The next part of this is to be willing. Become willing, and not just willing, but unwavering and confident. Will is a great thing that we have. If you put your will towards placing things before God, that's what's going to happen. And will is not a passive thing. It's not, oh, well, I'm going to just, see what happens, and I'm willing to let whatever happens, happens. When we're going within and we want to have this experience with God, will becomes something else. It's, no, I desire this. I can do this. I will do this. That is the attitude with which we go within. And the next part is to set my destination and purpose no less than communion with God. And you know that if you don't have a destination, you're probably not going to arrive at it. And if you don't have a purpose, you're probably going to get bored with what's going on, and you're not going to achieve a purpose. So we want to set that. I go to the quiet within to commune with God. It doesn't have to be a forceful thing. It doesn't have to be a very conscious thing. It's just that we know that that's our destination and our purpose, and we keep that in mind. And the last part of this is to put your faith in the right direction. I believe in the unseen. I believe in the unseen. Because we spend most of our lives believing in the world of sense and materiality and form and experience. And so it is a big step for us to turn and say, no, I believe in the realm of the invisible. I believe in the power of this that is within me. That is where I put my faith. And if you think that your faith is not great enough, then the attitude becomes, I believe, heal thou my unbelief, as Jesus said. So the next aspect of the silence, however this one shows up for you, is our actual time of meditation. In my quiet time of meditation, I consciously commune with God and am silently inspired with divine ideas. The key here is that we consciously commune with God. Meditation itself begins a process of loosening the grip of the material world and opening our intuitive portal. In and of itself, meditation is very useful because it involves deep relaxation, calming, and centering. And that's why it has become very mainstream and highly accepted, even in this country where we have resisted things like that for a long time. It has many health benefits, doesn't it? Mental health, physical health. It's great. But people can get stuck in it. They experience these mental and physical benefits, and they love the technique and the feeling so much that meditation becomes an end in itself. We forget our goal and our purpose. As a spiritual practice, meditation involves so much more. It is calming and relaxing, but it is with a heightened sense of awareness and a highly accelerated mind action. So it's very different. If you're truly meditating, truly going towards the silence, you're not going to fall asleep. It's too interesting. So we remember our destination, we remember our goal, and we don't get sidetracked by the method or by daydreaming or mindlessly wandering around in the inner realm. Now, some of you may be able to just stop and turn within and immediately get into a space of being open and receptive. And that is great. And that's something that we should strive for, is to get to that point where in our busy world, we can just stop and be quiet and say, I'm here, God, and listen for that inspiration to come, that feeling to come, that knowing to come. But many of us find ourselves dealing with thoughts and images that distract us and disturb our attempted peace, and that can get really frustrating, and it can stop our meditation time, or it can really get us off track and make us very frustrated about it. If we start getting those distractions, we want to remember our destination and purpose. I am going deeper within to know God. That's how you talk to your inner self. That's how you talk to your thought people that are trying to get your attention. We keep your mind focused on God. And to do that, you keep your mind focused on ideas of good. I love this. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord, from the book of Isaiah. Often when we go into prayer and meditation, things aren't going very well in our lives. And we tend to speak in our minds to God from a state and in a language of lack, loss, pain, judgment, anger, limitation of some sort. And we need to remember that God is not those things. Jesus told us God is good. God is only good. And so God dwells in the realm of good. And that's where this all-present mind is, in the realm of good. And if we're coming purely out of lack and pain and speaking on that level, we are not in the flow of God's good. We are the ones that need to set up this communication. Spirit will help us. Our very soul knows how to do this. So we trust the soul. But we can accelerate the process by lifting our own thoughts to the level of God thought. And that's what we do. That's what we teach in truth. Lift our thoughts to the level of God thoughts. That is the turning to God. That's how we get in the flow of good. At any point in it, remember to ask for help. So this process of inner communion can start something like this. You begin on the level of the intellectual because that's how we start out when we go into meditation. We are thinking beings, and so we go into meditation and we're still thinking. And so just from our intellectual comprehension, whatever that level is, we think of the highest and the best thing we can, that what we believe to be true of God and of us. It might be something like, I need to drop this error thought and focus on good. Focus on something like love or peace or joy. That's great. Do that. Contemplate the idea of love or peace or joy and see where that idea begins to take you. Or think of a phrase that points you towards God, like I and the Father are one. It quiets the mind. The intellect has the ability to know that there is something greater than itself, and it has the ability to know when it hears the truth. So when you speak the truth to it, the intellect, even if it's just for a second, has a tendency to become quiet. And that is your moment. You listen. You see where your mind goes. See what comes. And distractions are going to come. Thoughts and sounds, stuff like, did I take out the trash? Or I'm such a lousy person in life. And you're going to go off on trains like that. And what you want to do is brush those off and return back to your idea that you are contemplating. Take love. Focus on love. Ask it to reveal itself to you. Get into this feeling of what love is on this highest level. Get behind the idea and let it tell you what it is. So as you do this, thinking a high thought, becoming still and listening, you will find that eventually a higher thought comes. And we begin this dynamic of watching what's going on in our minds. Thoughts or trains of thoughts might seem to enter your mind that weren't there before, that don't seem to be from you, that seem new but familiar, and you work with that thought. And the important thing is to know at that point, say, I am communing with God in the center of my being. You want to affirm that. You want to recognize it. Acknowledge it. This may go on for a very short time or much longer. But as I said, at some point the intellect is satisfied that there is something greater than itself. And eventually you're going to come to the silence. And in the silence, I cease all conscious thought. Here I stand on the threshold of pure being. The silence is just that. It's a threshold. It's not a stopping point, but a beginning. The opening into the expansive, creative universe of God. And you may feel a change when that happens. Some people feel it as a deep inner peace or a great warmth. You may have experienced it as a kind of a pleasant heaviness in your mind. How do you experience it? Joel Goldsmith described it as a click. I don't know if he was talking about an audible sound, but there comes a moment where if you're paying attention, you will recognize that something changed. And that is when you have touched the hem of the garment of the Lord. At that moment, the trick is not to recoil. And some do because they don't understand what's happening, so they don't continue with it. They get very uncomfortable and they leave. What we want to do is we want to relax more deeply with the thought, I let go and let God. I let go and I let God. And once we do that, we enter the inner realm of the kingdom of God, the one that Jesus spoke of. What goes on there, no one can really tell. They can't describe it. They can't really talk about it. It goes on in the silence. No one knows. That's why Jesus, in his parables, described it as being like a kingdom. This realm of God is like a kingdom. To get into the kingdom, you do this or you do that, but it's always that metaphor, that place within is like a kingdom. So we don't know what will happen with you there. Only your soul knows. It's truly a personal experience. But if we look at the creative law, God's creative law of from the within out, from the invisible to the visible, we begin to understand that everything, all thought and form, all guidance and inspiration, start in that silence and in that stillness. It is in the beginning, God. It is a point of pure power and pure peace. If you've had a chance to read your bulletin back, there is a great excerpt from a Unity publication. And in part it says, the silence then becomes a place in consciousness for receiving the direct, wordless inspiration of the Almighty, where the Spirit of Truth becomes the only teacher, where man gains knowledge of the infinite at first hand. Silence becomes the unfolding presence of divinity itself. In that moment, the complete reconstruction of your nature begins. And the more you return, the more complete it is. So we want to rest here in the be still and know that I am God. And in the last aspect of this experience in the silence, Myrtle Fillmore described it this way. We have the mind of Christ, and it is for us to make conscious union in the silence with the all-providing mind of God, lifting our thoughts to its standard of truth and holding them in this truth as we go about our own particular duties of the day. So as we emerge from our time of silence, our wordless communion with God, there is a time where we move back and forth through the portal of meditation. You are still in a holy moment, and you want to recognize that. You're sort of between two worlds, aren't you? What is taking place there is that you are assimilating what has transpired in the silence and what you have been given on this silent, wordless, thoughtless level of being. The Spirit of God is working in you to interpret what you learned into something that you can understand. It's translating. It's translating it from the form of pure potential, pure good, into something that you can actually apply in your life. And so absolute peace and the idea and experience of absolute peace becomes, in your life, the thought and the experience and the feeling of being peaceful. We integrate it. We are integrating all of this into our consciousness. So what we want to do is lay hold of these truths that appear in our mind and in our feelings and make them part of our consciousness. Form them in our minds, and we do that by affirming them. The difference between when we went in and now that we're going out is that these thoughts are probably no longer intellectual. They're now inspired. So the very same words that you used going in, words like, I and the Father are one, take on a whole new meaning once you have touched the stillness within, once you have had a personal experience of the Father. And now it is I and the Father are one, and you know it. You might say the Spirit of God is lifting my every thoughts because you feel it. I feel at one with the presence and the power of divine being, because you know it. Remember that confidence I said to take with you? Don't let it go. One of the greatest demonstrations of faith is that without any evidence, know that what you have sought, you have found, and your good is at hand. Thank you, God, for hearing me. I know that you have heard me always. Then watch. Watch what happens in your life to see if Spirit doesn't translate for you the inspiration that you have received in your dreams and inspired ideas and visions and changes in your outer world. What happens? What takes place? If you have a dream, an inspired thought, seek to find out what it is. In that way, you let your conscious mind receive the gifts of Spirit, and you live from the truth that you have received. So this is what I have found out by my studies on the silence and my observations. And your assignment going forth is to find out the rest. And you will do that from God. So thank you very much for coming out today. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll be back here next week with Reverend Doug. Thank you.
You've been watching a talk presented at the Unity Church of Grand Junction by Reverend Doug Wator. We would like to thank everyone who joined us here today in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado, as well as those of you who are joining us online. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. Also, please feel free to share this video with anyone you think might be interested or benefit from this message. If this video brought value to your life, please consider making a donation by clicking the link below to our PayPal donation account. Thanks again so much for watching.